Kingdoms of Amalur. Your fate is possibly sealed forever. The future looks grim, but at least we have this interesting title to look back at. For a new IP, Kingdoms of Amalur was fairly ambitious, taking elements from Fable, Skyrim, and other role-playing games. It needed to sell 3 million to break even, but unfortunately, it was too much to handle. Regardless of the reason, did it deserve more? Possibly, but let's have second breakfast first. This is Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. The game starts out with you dying. Kind of anticlimactic now, is it? You are then resurrected as a person who can control their own destiny. You are under attack and it's time to battle the enemies. The beginning serves as a tutorial of sorts as you create your character and defend yourself from the attackers. The game isn't very difficult to understand, but it's still a welcome addition to have a tutorial. Honestly, this was a well done intro. I became intrigued of the state of the world and what lies ahead. Early on, you'll realize that there's a crap ton of combat, and fortunately, it's done well. There are a variety of weapons to choose from, including swords, daggers, staves, fey blades, and even shock rims. All these weapons are pretty satisfying to use, and depending on your playstyle, you'll easily find your niche. As you defeat enemies, you will gain fate, which is used to charge up your reckoning meter. Once it's full, you can activate it and time begins to slow down. From here, you can defeat enemies much quicker and land a killing blow that prompts a quick time event. This is one of the rare times where it actually makes sense, since performing well in these events increases your XP gains. Stealth is another viable option to use if you aren't into head-on battles. This is extremely useful, especially for the larger enemies in the game. It saves up on at least one health potion per stealth kill. The monsters are decently varied. You have your typical fantasy enemies with a few twists here and there. Nothing too out of the ordinary though. Big enemies, small enemies, flying enemies, etc, etc. The variety forces the player to adapt to the enemy, which helps to eliminate the tedium of constant combat. Unique to this game is how it encourages diversification through fate cards and with its leveling up system. Most games have you stuck in a rut with a certain character type, but here you can really mix up your character if you choose so. Heck, you can be a jack of all trades and still kick ass like a true jackass. Badass. In terms of pure visuals, Kingdoms of Amalur is a smooth experience. Running at 60 frames per second without ever dipping, it is beautiful to look at and savor the vivid scenery. It features artwork very similar to Fable's art style, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The colors look absolutely fantastic and vivid. The sounds, however, are decent, but the music is kind of generic. It sounds like repeats of songs I've heard from other games and movies, especially from Lord of the Rings. The world is freaking massive, and there's a crap ton to do and explore. After putting in about 20 hours, I barely scratched the surface. Apparently, this game takes about 200 hours to complete all the quests, which is just ridiculous. You'll definitely get your money's worth in pure content alone. Exploring the world offers its own benefit. The only limitation are the invisible walls. Some prevent you from jumping off of a cliff, while others are just oddly placed. It makes the game feel more like a linear RPG like Fable, rather than a complete open world like many Bethesda titles. The loot is sweet, but I believe crafting your weapons is really where you'll get the most fun from. With different pieces, you can mix and match to get the best combination possible. To top it off, you can name both your weapons and armor, furthering the role-playing aspect. Unfortunately, the quests themselves are relatively hit or miss. The main quests are okay, but aren't really very spectacular or memorable. The side quests are much worse, and a lot of the various plot lines get repeated, especially since at least 50% of them involve religion or a lover of some sort. The rewards, however, are definitely worth it, so questing is something you'll do a lot of if you would like to level up soon. That's the only major flaw I see. The world itself isn't too interesting and can easily be seen as fairly generic. There are moments, however, where the game is trying to create a sense of lore and legacy, especially in this burial site where you can read some epitaphs on who lies there and their significance in the world. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning has almost everything that an RPG should have. A huge open world, tons of quests, factions, great loot, enjoyable combat, a challenging experience, and a bunch of other quirks. While the quests themselves are lackluster and the world itself lacks that special feeling, everything else is well done. It's a shame of the fate that has bestowed upon 38 Studios, including their founder, Curt Schilling. Yes, that Curt Schilling. The demise of 38 Studios has drained his personal fortune to its entirety. It probably was just too ambitious for a new company to undertake. Tragedy aside, I highly recommend this title. I haven't played all the way through yet, which will take ages, but it has been very enjoyable so far. Thank you guys for watching as always, and this is Pow3rh0use still asking, where's the fair use?